Good evening and welcome to our public meeting at 6 p.m. December 18th. Can I have a mover and a seconder to open the meeting? Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, second by Councillor Jaworski. Be it resolved that the committee of the the public meeting be opened at 6:03 to the call of the chair. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Approval of agenda. Were there any changes to the agenda? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McDonnell, seconded by Councillor Bougie, that we accept the agenda as presented. All those in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none. Any declarations of pecuniary interest? Seeing none, we'll get into new business. Zoning bylaw 06-2023, proposed zoning amendment. Ms. Haley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. I'm going to read required wording under the Ontario Planning Act for both applications we have this evening. So this is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Ontario Planning Act. Any person may attend this meeting in support of or in opposition to the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. If a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of the Council of the Township of South Glengarry to the Ontario Land Tribunal, also known as OLT. If a person or public body does not make written submissions or oral submissions at this public meeting to the Council of the Township of South Glengarry before the bylaw is decided upon, the person or public body may not be added as a party to the hearing of an appeal before the OLT unless there are reasonable grounds to do so. There we go. Is that me? Okay. Sorry about this. Okay, I'll let Casey change it. So the first application that's before us this evening is known as Lot 10 and part of Lot 11, Plan 26 in the geographic village of Lancaster, now in South Glengarry, and it's municipally addressed as 2 Elm Street, Lancaster. This is a key map showing where the property is located. You can see it's on the west side of the village, just north of the railway tracks. And we have a few photos now that would show the lot. The lot is primarily vacant with the exception of a small shed that's been there for many, many years. And the next few photos will show kind of the orientation of the corner lot. Perfect. Okay, thank you. So the applicant had received provisional consent, known as consent applications B149 and B15022, to sever the subject land into 3 parcels. And the purpose of this was to propose to build three-story triplexes, 1 on each parcel of property. That then resulted us looking at the possibility for development both as either a single detached or a semi-detached or a triplex. And we wanted to then bring the property into compliance, knowing that there was a zoning amendment or minor variance that was going to be presented to show the development of the 3 separate parcels. So this resulted in the agent of the applicant filing a zoning bylaw amendment to recognize or to request permission for the development for the 3 separate lots. So to make it easy moving forward, we've recommended that there will be 3 exception zones per lot. So I'll read out the specific request for the zoning bylaw. This is an amendment to rezone bylaw 3809, which is the zoning bylaw of the Township of South Glengarry. The purpose of this amendment is to rezone the subject lands from residential 3 to residential 3 exception 6, residential 3 exception 7, and residential 3 exception 8. And that would be to reflect the 3 proposed lots. So the first parcel, known as R3 exception 6, would permit 53% of the lot frontage being constructed as a driveway or a parking space as opposed to 50%, requesting a 4.4 meter lane that provides ingress and egress to and from parking spaces, a 2.6 meter buffer along the lot line abutting the street from a parking area providing more than 4 parking spaces. It would remove the requirement of a 2-meter fence along the northern mutual lot line of an abutting lot in a residential zone. And it would reduce the minimum lot area from 1,080 square meters to 732.56 square meters, and to reduce minimum lot frontage from 30 meters to 16.09 meters. The next exception request is R37. It has similar requests but slightly different numbers, looking at 54% of the lot frontage being constructed as a driveway or parking space, a 1-meter buffer along the lot line abutting the street from a parking area providing more than 4 parking spaces, removing the requirement of a 2-meter fence along the southern and western mutual lot lines of an abutting lot in a residential zone, requesting a 3.7-meter exterior side yard setback as opposed to 6 meter, a 3.5-meter rear yard setback as opposed to 6 meters, and a 4.6-meter setback from the proposed stairs in the front yard as opposed to a 6 meters, and to reduce the minimum lot area from 1,080 square meters to 592.5 square meters, and to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 30 meters to 25.14 meters. The next lot area is known as exception 3.8 or exception 8. And this request is 68% of the lot frontage being considered as a driveway or parking space, requesting a 1-meter buffer along the lot line abutting the street from a parking area providing more than 4 parking spaces, removing the requirement of a 2-meter fence along the southern and eastern mutual lot lines of an abutting lot in a residential zone, requesting a 3-meter rear yard setback as opposed to a 6-meter, requesting a 4.6-meter front yard setback to the proposed stairs as opposed to a 6-meter, to reduce the minimum lot frontage from 30 meters to 19.55 meters, and to reduce the minimum lot area from 1,080 square meters to 505.86 square meters. And all other applicable provisions of zoning bylaw 3809 as amended shall apply to the exception zones R36, R37, and R38. We're now going to show you a little bit of the site plans to help you understand a little bit more what's happening here. So the proposed amendment would permit a number of exceptions from zoning bylaw 3809, as we just explained, and that would basically, to summarize it, is to reduce parking, required yards, and buffering. So the proposed development will require that existing municipal services to be extended to service the proposed development. Also, a joint lot grading and drainage plan has been requested by Infrastructure Services Department to ensure that grading and drainage will function cohesively along or across all 3 properties. The subject property is currently designated residential district and is located in the urban settlement area of Lancaster. And the proposed amendment does conform to the general intent of the official plan and the provincial policy statement. So again, this is showing the location of the subject property. In this section, though, you can see the property divided into 3 sections. You'll see 2 kind of square lots that would be on the northern part of the property fronting on South Terrace, and then a narrower, longer lot fronting on Elm Street. These sketches are going to be difficult to see in the presentation, and I apologize for this. It's just hard to get all of this information on here. But you're going to see that there's 2 3-plex units proposed to front on South Terrace Street, with a joint parking in the middle. And that's one of the reasons why we're requesting, or the applicant's requesting, an increased area in the front to allow for parking, as well as to eliminate the requirement for fencing, so we don't have a fence going down the middle of a parking lot. And then you're going to see the bottom portion of that screen, or this screen, showing the other 3 unit that's fronting directly onto Elm Street, and then the parking that would be located at the front and the back. At the top of the screen, you'll see a hatched area, and that identifies basically a joint drainage ditch or swale that would then service all 3 parcels of property. And as I mentioned, our Infrastructure Services Department has been working with the agent of the applicant to come up with an approach that will allow for a positive drainage situation that won't negatively impact the municipal road allowance, but will also allow for a positive drainage system between the 3 lots. These are just more zoomed in versions, so you can see this would be the corner of South Terrace and Elm. You can see how that lot would be oriented with the balconies at the back, steps at the front. And same, this would be the west side fronting on South Terrace Street. So almost a mirrored image. So we have circulated all abutting property owners within 120 meters as per the Ontario Planning Act. We've also placed an advertisement in the Cromwell Standard Freeholder. And to date, we've received no written comments from members of the public. I haven't even received one phone call. There just hasn't really been any major public interest on this property. And the zoning amendment application will be subject to a decision of council, and a staff report including a recommendation will be brought to council for a decision in the near future. We have with us this evening Anthony Vincelli from EVB Engineering. EVB Engineering is the agent representing the applicant, and I'm sure Anthony would be happy to answer any questions of council or the public, especially in regards to the extension of servicing that's required and the proposed grading and drainage. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there any questions of the public or of members of the committee? Councillor Jaworski?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor McDonald. Am I making noise? I hear feedback. My question, I think it's to Ms. Haley. Just when you read through the the different sorry, that was distracting me. The different exception lists. In some cases, it was clear what the normal is, and then in other cases, it wasn't so clear to me. So I was wondering if you could, like for example, R36, we have, it permits a 4.4 meter lane that provides ingress and egress to and from parking spaces, but what is that a modification from?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you for your question. So that would be a modification from a 6 meter lane. I can review them all with you if you wish. Sure. So we'll start with R36, requesting 53% of the lot frontage. As I mentioned, 50% of the frontage is permitted according to the bylaw. A 4.4 meter lane is being requested when the bylaw requires it to be a 6 meter lane. A 2.6 meter buffer along the line abutting the street is required to be 3 meters when you have more than four parking spaces. And then removing the requirement of a 2 meter fence is simply removing that requirement. As I mentioned, with there being a joint parking lot on the portion facing South Terrace, it doesn't make sense to have a fence going through the property. It wouldn't be able to function. It wouldn't be able to fit. And then the other two being the reduction of the lot area from 1,080 to 732.55, and then the reduction of the lot frontage from 30 meters to 16.09 meters.
So the purpose of the 1 meter buffer along the lot line, is that so that there's like a grass area between the road and the parking?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct. So typically we want to see a 3 meter buffer so that you have that landscaped separation space before between the lot line or the street curb and then where you physically start parking. It depends. Some communities are designed with no buffer. Some are designed with a larger buffer. And so in this particular case, in our residential zone, we have a 3 meter when it's 4 parking spaces or more. If it was less than 4, then there would be no buffering required.
Is it fair to say that's an aesthetic requirement? It's not really doesn't come back to really function, does it?
Yeah, again, through you, Mr. Mayor, it can be an aesthetic requirement. It can also be sometime a requirement to help deal with stormwater grading and drainage. But the engineers in this case would have to factor in that they don't have that surface available to them, but it definitely can be designed accordingly.
All right. If I may, just a question, because you know me in front yard setbacks. I've had conversations about those things. So for R37, and it's more just a question, not to try and impose a thought here, is it says 4.6 meter setback from the proposed stair, and then 3.5 meters from the rear yard setback. So we make the front yard, in this case, bigger than the backyard. Mm-hmm. Okay.
And I can speak to that, Mr. Mayor, if you don't mind. So in this particular case, if you look at the drawing that's in front of you, you'll see that there's also a parking space that's proposed that's perpendicular to the structure. So if you were to reduce that front yard even further, it would make it more difficult to create a parking space and to maneuver into that parking space.
No, that is fair, thank you. I will always talk about front yard setbacks.
Essentially, what the owner is trying to do is really maximize the developability of this property to make sure they can get as many units as possible, which obviously has resulted in quite a few requests of exceptions from the zoning bylaw. But I think there's a lot of work that's gone into the preliminary design to prove that it can function. Like, we've been working on this file for quite some time.
Yeah, and if I may just, because again, I guess YouTube, it can be a blessing and a curse. For stories that are higher than 2 stories in Canada particularly, do we need 2 sets of staircases? Is that why we don't see them? I know it's not related to this. I'm very happy for like the density which is proposed because it's in an urban environment, which is exactly what we want to do. It was just a question for, like, say this particular property, like a future property wanted to be like a 3-story property or a 4-story property. At what point do you need 2 sets of ingress and egress, I guess is my question, or is that not a question for tonight? Maybe it's not fair, sorry, and it's off topic, so I can recant it.
Just to confirm that, you're saying like the front steps at the front, so there are 2 doors proposed at the front. So the front steps, and again, I'm not overly familiar with the architectural drawings, they weren't completed at the time of wrapping this up, but I believe those front steps that have stairs actually go into 1 unit. And then there's another door which is represented by that little triangle, and it would go into a platform that essentially would separate and have a set of stairs going up and a set of 2 sets of stairs going up, I believe, was the architectural plan.
Okay, and sorry for the digression. I'll keep some of these, the further conversation just for my learning will be in person, but thank you for answering those questions. Are there any other questions of committee? Excellent. We will move to the second item on the agenda, which is zoning bylaw 16, 2023, Prudhoe MB1 development. Ms. Haley.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so you know, the agent who's a planner representing the applicant is online by the name of Mr. Barton. So if you can see Mr. Barton's name on the screen, that's the reasoning for that. So this property is located at part of Lot 18, Concession 2 Indian Lands, being parts 2 and 4 on Reference Plan 14R425 in the geographic township of Charlottenburg, now in South Glengarry, and is municipally addressed as 6301 Boundary Road. The subject property is approximately 5 acres in size and is not serviced by municipal water and waste services. So it's currently serviced by a septic system and a well. The subject property currently contains a single detached dwelling and accessory structures that are proposed to be demolished as part of the proposed development. This is a key map of the subject property. To help orient everyone, on the top of the screen you'll see a red line that represents Highway 401. So the property is south of Highway 401, located on the east side of Boundary Road. We have a few photos of the subject property, and this is fronting onto Boundary Road. This would be the long laneway that would lead to the existing dwelling. At the top of the laneway to the left is where the dwelling is located. It's difficult to see in this image, but it's nestled in the trees in there. And then this would just be an image along Boundary Road facing north. So the purpose of this amendment is to rezone the subject property from highway commercial to light industrial to permit a proposed transportation terminal, and all other applicable provisions of zoning bylaw 3809 as amended shall continue to apply. The applicant has provided a planning justification report to rationalize the proposed amendment within the context of the Provincial Policy Statement 2020 and the United Counties of SD&G's official plan. The subject property is currently designated employment district and is located within the urban settlement area of Glen Walter, and the proposed amendment conforms to the official plan and the provincial policy statement. The applicant has the application has been circulated to all abutting property owners within 120 meters, and we've also placed an advertisement in the Cornwall Standard Freeholder. And to date, we have received no written or verbal comments. I have not received any phone calls on this application either. The application will be subject to a decision of council in the near future, and we hope to bring a staff report to council as soon as we can. At this time, Mr. Mayor, I would like to turn it over to Mr. Barton, who's representing MB1 Planning, who will explain more details on what the developer is proposing to do. So, Michael, I'll turn it over to you, and I'll adjust the slides accordingly as I think you're ready. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Michael. Are there any questions of council? Are there any questions from the public? All right, well, thank you very much for the presentation. And we'll move on to the conclusion of this meeting. Just get back to the agenda. So adjournment, can I have a mover and a second to adjourn? Moved by Deputy Mayor Lang, seconded by Councillor McDonnell, that the public meeting be closed at the call of the chair at 6:36 at the call of the chair. All in favor? Any opposed? Seeing none, carried. Have a good evening.